Action.
Well, he laid face down on the barroom floor. He was smelling like whiskey and screaming for more. Well, he smelled like a stockyard and he looked like all hell. But his speed with the 6-gun could only be beat by his luck with the ladies, the local elite. He shot 14 men over women, they say. And he did it in one fucking day. And his name was Chris Mackey. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Buttes, Colorado. This is a little portion of podcast produced by my friend Chris Mackey about, it's called The Time Beyond Bedtime. And what I'm going to do for y'all today, this goes out for aspiring songwriters, musicians, people that, want to go as far as I've gone, which is right here to Two Buttes, Colorado. And this is a video about being a songwriter, but maybe a lazy songwriter. Everybody's a little bit lazy, right? So I'm going to explain to you how you write a good song, and you take a 3-minute song and you make it into a 10-minute song. You write one verse, but suddenly it becomes 2 verses. So there's some tricks involved there. I thought about it because I am a lazy songwriter. I average about one song every 5 years, so that means by the time I die, I've probably got about 4 more songs in me. Just kidding. But instead of being a creative lyricist writer and writing a lot of adjective-laced nonsense, what I have figured out is you take an experience that you have had in your life or something you witnessed, but it's better if you were, right in the middle of it all, and you write about that experience. And that way you don't have to think about anything because you just tell that story. That's the first lazy part. So I'm going to do a song that I wrote about an experience that I had. And it's a night that I was married at the time, and had a fight with my wife, and I was not in a good frame of mind, so I made a couple of bad decisions that night. And the first bad decision that I made was getting behind the wheel of my little blue pickup truck when I'd had way too much to drink. 0.27, but we'll talk about that later. And the second mistake that I made that night, bad decision, was wearing them Norwegian clogs. Now, I'll explain it real quick. I was married to a Norwegian national. I was in Norway with her for a little while, and I saw everybody wearing these clogs, and that was so easy to slip in and out of them, and so I had to get me a pair, and I got them, and I took them back to the States, and happened to put them on that night. And this is the story about it. I got drunk, crashed my truck, had to face this ugly crowd. I rang a bell, they call the law. Honey, I'm not proud, I'm in the jailhouse. I'm just a phone call away from hanging, and I feel like singing the blues. Now you ask yourself, what's he talking about wearing clogs? And Well, that particular night I drove over to my friend Wally's house, and I was wearing them clogs, and when he saw me he said, "I can't go out with you tonight, but when you go out, for God's sakes, don't wear them clogs. Put on some regular shoes." In my state of mind, I said, "You know what? I can take this clog off and come upside somebody's head. Wooden shoes." Well, the bottoms of them. Now, this is coming from the world's worst fighter, so yeah, I was liquored up already. Walter just laughed and told me to change them shoes. Well, to make a long story short, I didn't heed his advice. I went out to the bar and continued drinking heavy. I didn't get into too much trouble or confrontations or anything. Didn't have to take them clogs off and whoop it upside somebody's head. They'd probably take it away from me and whoop me upside the head. But it was drizzling a little bit in Santa Barbara, California, where I was living at the time. So I got in my little blue truck and I was driving back to my friend Wally's house. Well, I went around a curve just a little too fast. And the slick pavement, my little blue pickup truck started to fishtail, and I jammed down on the brake, and them clogs slipped off the brake and jammed in between them and the gas pedal, and I went sideways through these people's lawns and through this other fence of this other house, and my truck was now high centered. It was 2:30 in the morning, by the way. 0.27. Well, I tried to drive on out of there, but I was high centered. So I got outside of my little blue truck and I was standing there in horror just looking at what I had done. And then the lights started coming on in the neighborhood there. More and more of them, and then people started coming out of their houses in all kinds of nighttime attire, like boxer shorts and nighties and house coats and things like that. And I was standing there, and there was more and more of them people, and they started looking like an ugly crowd to me. And they were moving towards me a little bit, inch by inch, and then this lady said, "Drunk drivers killed my best friend." And I knew at that time that I had one thing to do, and that was just, I kicked off them clogs and I started running. Because the clogs is what got me in trouble there. It wasn't the drinking. So I'm running down the road as fast as I can run. I ran about 15 blocks, I think. But I kept hearing the sirens coming closer and closer. And I thought they'd be getting further and further away, but nope. They're getting closer. So I stopped, and I was gassed, I have to tell you, after running that far. And I was bent over, taking some breaths, hearing the sirens get closer, and I looked up, and there was this man, and I recognized him from the ugly crowd in the neighborhood. He was in a car, and he must have had the very first cell phone ever. It was huge, it was big, it was almost like a radio that you had in the army in the old days. But he was talking on it, and he had one of them spotlights that you plug into your lighter, and he had been following me down the road with that spotlight and that phone, telling the police exactly where I was. Now that the sirens are really close, so I saw my chance, and I took a quick right down this driveway. Damned, it was a gravel driveway. I'm barefooted. My feet slid out from under me, and I went sideways, and I landed on my face when I came down in the gravel. And the police were on me now, and I was so tired from running 15 blocks. But they got me, and they came over, and they worked me just a little bit. Not real bad brutality, but yeah, working me, handcuffed me, and then I heard the sirens get closer, and it was the fire truck. And I saw the paramedic guy there, and I went, "I'm hurt." And he came over and he said, "Wow, he's a little bloody. Maybe he should go to the hospital." And the police said, "This asshole caused all kinds of trouble down the way. He don't need to go to the hospital. Take him to the jailhouse." Well, the paramedic, he reached down and he plucked a piece of gravel right out of my scalp. And I went, "I'm hurt." Well, the police, they grabbed a hold of this young man and they went around the fire truck, and I could hear them talking. I couldn't make out exactly what they were saying, but I had a pretty good idea, because a minute later they came and the young man said, "Nah, he's okay. He may be bloody and have gravel in his scalp, but he don't need to go to the hospital. Take him to the jailhouse." So off we go. But there was more humiliation waiting for me, because we were going in the wrong direction of the jailhouse, because I had had an experience there before. We won't ever talk about that. But they were going back towards the scene of the crime. And lo and behold, we got there, and the ugly crowd was still out in their 90s and their boxer shorts, and there was more cop cars there, and my little blue pickup truck was still high-centered, and it was still running. It was in neutral. And they had to get me out of that one police car, handcuffed and bloody, and put me into another police car to drive back in the other direction to the county jail. But they had to show the neighborhood that they had got their man, and they were safe now, because I was a menace that night. I'm not proud. And the last thing I saw, when they put me into the police car, as we're driving away, I looked back and everybody was going. So I wake up in the morning, I am skinned up, I am hurt, I am .27 still. I called my friend Wally, and he came to get me because I was afraid to go home to my wife. I was scared of her, and he picked me up and he looked down at my feet and said, "Where's your shoes, Larry? Where's your clogs?" Oh, I wanted to kill him right then. He laughed. He had some whiskey and a marijuana joint, and we smoked it, and I drank that whiskey, and he said, "I have to take you home to your wife now." I begged him not to do it, but he had to do it. And so he did it, and he dropped me off, and I could see her through the curtains peeking out, and I summoned up all of my courage that I could, and I walked up to our front door, and I started to put my key in it, and the door got jerked open, and there she stood, the little woman, and she looked at me and she said, "Did you get drunk? Did you crash your truck? Did you face this ugly crowd?" I said, "Yeah, baby." She said, "Did you run and fall? They call the law. Are you proud?" And I said, "No, I'm hurt, and I was in the jailhouse all last night. I was just a phone call away from hanging, and I feel like singing the blues." And she said, "You can take the blues and just jam them, you drunk. Get in here. Are you proud?" Thank you very much. You can figure out the clever way that I made it into 2 verses there, being lazy. And we will see you on the podcast soon, The Time Beyond Bedtime. Thank you very much.